So Fastgen is a fantastic alternative backend provider for your FlutterFlow and no-code application. In this particular video, we're going to solve a very common problem that you may find when using other platforms, and that is we might want to bring back two data sets together in one single API call to our FlutterFlow application. So for example, in this particular video, we are going to look at having a blog post that will also have an associated list of comments. We're going to bring that back on a single API request and make it available to our FlutterFlow application. Let's have a quick look and see what the application looks like. So here's the application running in test mode, a very simple FlutterFlow application. On the top here, you can see that I've actually got my blog post details here. And then just below that, I've got a series of comments. Now, of course, you can do two API calls in your application. If you set up Fastgen in a way that you just retrieve back the actual post, you can then make a second call and you can actually then return back the comments. That may be something you want to do, but you might want to only do it in one API call. So let's show you what it all looks like with inside Fastgen. So here I am in a very simple Fastgen project. You can see here I've got a couple of database tables that I have created on the platform, one called posts and one called comments. If I hit the post option here, you can see that I've got some very simple database columns. I've got a title, got some content. I've got a couple of indicators, which I'm not too really worried about at this particular stage. I've got a photo URL as well, which is kind of showing that photo at the top of our sample application. And here the unique key of each of the posts is 1, 2, and 3. And of course, they are linked to our comments table. So if I just move over to our database here and hit on comments, you can see here that I've got the ID itself of each of the actual comments, and here is the post ID that they are associated with. So of course, when I create my API call, I'm going to ask for a particular post, and I'm also going to say, please return me back then all of the comments that are associated with that post. And we're going to bring that together with inside this API call, which is going to make it really super easy for our FlutterFlow application to pick all of this up in one simple call. And then of course we can distribute that with inside our FlutterFlow application. So let's now see how we create this API to actually do all of this magic for us within Fastgen. And I'll walk you through step by step on how to actually do this. Okay, so here I am with inside the API section. Let's create a brand new API to do this. Don't worry about these ones that's here. We're going to create a brand new one to do this. Hit the add route option up here. Let's choose a get because we're going to retrieve the data and return it. And the first thing that we're going to do here is click up here and let's give it a name. So we're going to call this one get comment. It's going to be a get request, of course, but we need to give this a decent URL. Get post with comments. There we go. Just hit the authentication option. We're just going to make this a public route for now. We're not going to put any authentication behind it. Just hit the save option, and that is the entry point created. Now, the first thing that we need to do is actually do a database query to return back the actual post itself. So let's choose the DB query. Let's drag that over. Let's drop that just here. There it is. Let's just select that. Let's give this a name. We're going to call this one get post. Let's click on the configure query option. So let's type in select a star. So we're going to bring back everything for this particular query. We're going to say from posts, because that's our table name for our posts. Okay, where system ID. So just do that. Equals, and then what we now need to do is we now need to click on this little kind of sort of key icon. So just select that. Now this is going to come in via the query parameters. Of course, when we actually call out to this particular URL, we're going to pass in an ID equals, and we need to pick that up because that's going to be passed in as a variable. So just choose inputs query dot, okay, and we're going to just call this one ID. That's all that we need to do. If I just hit the little test query option here, that's just going to validate everything is looking good for us. So we can now save that now. So that's going to bring back all of the columns of the post based on the ID of the post that we need. Okay, so just hit the save changes. That is good. And hit the save there. So that is great. So the next thing we actually need to do is we need to actually check to see if the actual post has actually been found. And if it's not, then we actually then need to return back a different message, of course, then actually the post detail that would then be coming back. So the way to do that, let's move over and do an if condition here. Let's just move over here and say if condition. Let's just drop that in here, just select that. And we're just going to give this action an actual name. So we're just going to say valid post question mark. And in here, this is where we now need to actually now pad out this this check. Okay, we want to make sure it's not equal to null. Okay, so what we do is let's just choose the insert variable. If I just scroll down here, this is the name of the actual database query that we just created. So just just choose that. And we're just going to say is not equal to a null. But what we need to do is within inside the outputs here. So if I just in between the S and the curly bracket, we're just going to put in uppercase the term result. Okay, so the result will be part of the object which contains all of our data. Result is a list of the actual data that we got coming out of our database there. So just make sure that set is result, hit that little save, and we are in a good position. So of course, if it's not equal to null, then we're going to end in the more positive true direction. And of course, if it's not, we're going to end up in the false direction. So what we now need to do is once we go into the true, so the actual post is being found, we're then going to say, okay, now go and get all of the comments. Okay. So let's now add in another database query here. Let's just move over to here. Let's drop this one here. Just choose that. And here, let's give this one an actual name. So we're going to say get comments like that. We're going to say configure query, and this is where we now going to write out this additional query. So again, what we're going to do is something very similar to we did last time. Just do select, and we're going to bring back everything there. We're going to say from comments where, and then we're going to say post underscore ID is then equal. And again, of course, we're going to pass in that variable. Okay, so just choose the little insert variable. We're going to move down to the actual inputs query again, and of course this is going to be just simply ID. Of course I can test the query here, and that should come back a success. That's looking good. Hit the save changes and hit save again. So we're looking good in that particular part of the flow. So now of course if that all comes back good for us, we're not too worried about if there is no comments, of course. So if that actual result comes back and it's empty, well, we're not really worried about it because we're actually returning back the post. So what we now need to do is, of course, we now need to return this success back in a nice particular shape that we can then pull into our FlutterFlow application. So what we need to do is we need to move over to the right hand side here, just choose success. Let's drop success in here. Let's just choose that, and we're just going to give this a name. So we're going to say, return post with comments here. And then this is where we now need to start working on a very, very consistent shape. Now it's really, really important when you are working with APIs that the actual shape of the API is very, very consistent across all of the APIs that you create. So what we're going to do is we're now going to set this up now in a particular way that will be common against all of the APIs. Okay, so just hit the little enter there. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to type in fact, just into double quotes here, message. Okay, and then we are just going to return no message at this particular point because we're not returning back an error message or anything like that. So just press comma, and then what we're going to do is we're then going to type in another one called result. So this is kind of the location where we're going to kind of store everything. So just hit result, and then what we're going to do, an open sort of curly brackets there, and then what we're now actually going to combine those database results that's come back for our posts and our comments. So here I'm just going to type in comments like that, do another little colon, and then I'm just then going to do another set of double quotes there. But what I'm going to do is I'm now going to choose the little insert variable option here, and I'm just going to scroll down, and we're going to want to say we want to choose this one here. This is our database output for our actual comments that we've queried. So just choose that there. And of course, just here, we now need to just work on this a little bit because of course you've got the output there, but there's going to be a result. So this will be the list of comments. And of course, if we haven't got any comments, then it will just be empty. So we just need to do another little comma here. And this time we will also want to return back the post itself. So then just do another set of double quotes there. And now we're just going to insert the next variable in there. And this is where we will need to do the get post option here, the outputs. This is the very, very first database query that we did. So just choose that, put the little full stop there. And of course, this will be the result. Now, this is the key thing here is we need to say .0 because the database query will always be trying to return back a list of something. But of course, in our instance, we are just querying just to get the one single post. So by putting .0 at the end, that's going to make sure we're only going to get one come back. So that's really important. And then lastly, what we're just going to do here is just going to put another little comma here. And I'm also going to return back what's called a status. Now, this is really just a string status that will allow me just so I can, if I wanted to inside FlutterFlow, is I can actually look for, okay, did I get a status back of okay or an error? Then I can handle that conditionally with inside my FlutterFlow application. So I'm just going to say okay here because we know everything is good. You'll see that in a second when we actually put the more negative result result that we return back to FlutterFlow. So that's looking good. We can just hit save there. So that is looking really, really good for us. What we now need to do is we now need to handle this situation here. Of course, if we haven't received, or at least we're not going to return back any post in this particular example. So where it's got error here, let's just drag that over. Let's just drop the error response back here. So let's click on this. Let's give this a name. So I'm going to say return no post found, just like that. And here, this is where we're now just going to shape up this response for us. So it's very, very consistent. So I'm just going to put a message in here. Just do it like this. And although I keep doing that, it keeps going back there. I'm going to say no post found, just like that. So of course you can hook onto that with inside your FlutterFlow application. And of course with the result, I'm just going to return back null here. And then what I'm going to do is just going to choose then the status here. And I'm just going to do colon, and I'm going to say this is an error, like that. So it gives us something to hook on with inside our application if that post is not found. So that's pretty good. We're in a good position here. If I just hit save, we are looking pretty good. So what we can now do is we can now actually test this out. So what we're going to do, let's go down to the actual debug mode here on the bottom corner here. Now we know we've already got some data with inside the tables there. I showed you that earlier. Of course, if you're in your own tables, make sure you've got some data there to test. I'm going to go up to URL parameters there. I'm going to give my, I'm going to pass an ID. So I'm just going to really simulate me passing this ID in from my FlutterFlow application. So I know that I've got an ID called 1 here. Let's just hit save, and I can hit on this test draft root. Now here we go. So this is looking really, really good. So we know that we've got all greens down here. We're nowhere looking at a good position, and I can actually now click on this here, and you can now see that we've got no message, which is great. We've got the result, which is great, and then we've got the comments, and of course this with the square bracket here means that this is an array, so we've got multiple comments that are coming back, and you can see all of the fields here. And if I keep scrolling down, then hopefully you'll see the post. There's the post there, and then there's this single object that we've got coming back, which contains all of the table columns that we need that we can now hook onto inside our FlutterFlow application. You can see here that we've got the status of OK back. So that is looking really, really good. Of course, I can come back up here to the URL parameters. I can try now returning back something that I know that we definitely haven't got. And I'll just put a 5 in there, hit save, hit the test option. And here we go. This is the great thing about Fastgen. It gives you that visual cue here that this is now moving in this particular direction. So you can imagine that if you had really, really complex workflows, you're really going to be able to kind of get in amongst this now, really put some testing through it, and you can visually see how everything plays out here before you then move maybe into your FlutterFlow application, or you're trying to debug and trying to work out what's going wrong. Then you've got it very, very visual and very clean here. If I click on return no post found, you can see I've just got that very, very simple message that is coming back. So that is all looking really, really good. That's certainly one very, very simple way there of performing a series of queries onto our database, bringing everything together in one API result, and of course it makes it very easy with inside FlutterFlow. So let's now have a look at what that looks like in FlutterFlow. Let's quickly see what you need to do in order to hook onto this. And of course, if you want to stay to the end of the video, I'll quickly show you how I actually just build out that UI screen there, just in case, depending on your experience level. But you can just watch me just quickly build the UI out, the UI out, just so you can see kind of how this all works. So depending on your skill level with inside FlutterFlow, if you hang about, I'll show you how we actually build this screen out. But if not, and you don't want to stick around for too long, then have a look at this. This is really just the simple blog post screen here. And you can see here that what I've done is on the actual page column, I've actually just got a backend query that actually then calls out to the API with inside Fastgen. I'm passing in just a hard-coded ID just to demonstrate an actual result coming back, the actual post that we actually need. Of course, and then what I'm doing is I'm then just building out the rest of the actual widgets. I'm mapping them obviously onto the results of the actual API, and then down here I've then got a column here that's got a number of children that is being produced here of each of the actual comments. So that's pretty well much really straightforward in terms of what we got on display here. But of course now if you're interested, please stick around and I'll show you how I actually built this out using FlutterFlow and using Fastgen. So in FlutterFlow then I've got this very basic page called a blog post. I've worked out kind of all of the widgets and I've laid them out all on the UI there to make this particular section quite straightforward, but it's not doing anything clever at all. It's just a series of widgets that I've just styled up and dropped onto the actual page itself. So let's look at now doing the API call. We know that we've got our API now set up ready to go. So what we need to do is we need to now go into the actual API calls option here with on the left hand side, just choose API calls. Let's move up here. Let's just do what we should always be doing when we're working with a series of kind of API calls, is we should be creating a group, and the whole idea of a group here is to more kind of give ourselves a top level URL, and of course, and then the API calls kind of then hook off the back of that particular URL. It just makes it much easier to kind of keep things together. So just choose API group here. Let's just call this one Fastgen here just for simplicity. There we go, Fastgen. Let's move over to Fastgen platform. See at the top here, we've got the actual URL here. So just copy that to the actual clipboard itself. Move back over to FlutterFlow. Let's just put that base URL in here, and let's just remove this bit out here, this / get post with comments like that. That's all that we need to do, is just add the group, and then now we can move back over to here, and we can say add API calls. We're going to make that specific API call here, and of course, as you start building out more APIs, you're going to load this up on the left hand side with lots of different types of requests here. So I'm just going to give this one a name, get post with comments, just like that. And of course here, I think it was just get post comments, I think it was. Let's just double check. Get post with comments. There we go. So I just need to put with in there like that. Now, of course, we need to create a variable because we're going to pass in an ID. So just choose add a variable. It's going to be an ID here. It's just going to be, of course, an integer there. So it's just a number. And then we're going to go to query parameters. And this is that specific parameter that we need to add in itself. So just choose add parameter, just choose ID there. Now it's going to be a from variable because this is the one that we've just created. Select the variable and choose ID. That is good. So now if I just now say add call, of course, we can go up to response and test. Let's just put a value in here of 1. Let's give this a quick whirl. Hit the test API call, and you can see here that actually the entity is not found. There's one thing I forgot to do. We need to go back to Fastgen, and we need to hit the exit debug mode. And what we need to do is we need to actually deploy it. So we've created it, which is great, but we haven't actually deployed it into a more production-like way. So we need to hit the little deploy option here. Just say deploy to live. That's good. Go back to FlutterFlow here. If I now test that API call, then there we go. We've got all of the information back. So this is just as we saw in the actual debug mode here. We've got the message, we've got the result here with all of the comments, and you can see we've got the single post there. So that's looking all good for us. So that is great. So let's now just hit the save option there. So we're all in good shape. So what we can now do is we can now start building out the UI. So let's go and do that now. So here we are then back on our blog post screen. Let's start now building this out. So let's move over to the actual page column. So this is going to be where we are going to be performing that actual API call. Okay, so just move page column selected. Let's move over to the option here. I've just selected the backend query. We got add a backend query. Just choose that. Choose the query type. It's going to be an API call. Choose API call. Choose the group, which is Fastgen. And then, of course, it's going to be get post with comments because that's the only one we got there. And we're going to set an additional variable here. Now, of course, inside a typical application inside FlutterFlow, what you would probably have now is some kind of like page kind of parameter. So this is kind of, if you have like a list of blog posts, for example, and you select it, you'll be passing in an actual ID actually into the page, which this can then hook off to then actual add on to the API query to return back the post. But we're just going to actually hard code this for this particular example. So we're just going to say ID, and I'm just going to give this a value of 1. So it's going to return back that first blog post for us. Just hit the confirm option. So that is good. So that's now all set up for us. Now what we can now do is we can now start working on these widgets now to actually display that information. So within inside our actual photo, let's start there. Let's move down to the actual path option. Let's just select that. Now, you can see here, we've now got this option called get post with comments response. So just choose that. And now here, we've kind of got all of this is pre-filled for us. It's making an assumption here that we are going to want to pull a value out of that API response. So this is where we now need to hook onto the actual JSON path. Now, if you remember back with inside Fastgen when we actually looked at the output that was coming up, and in fact we looked at it with inside the API test that we just did, you know that we've actually got a result that's coming back. Now, then the next one down from that is actually then going to be the actual post itself. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to put a dollar symbol here. We're going to say .result like this. Okay, we're going to pick out the actual post itself, and then we need to look inside our database to see exactly what our name of our actual field is. And I think it was called photo URL, but let's have just a little double check with inside the platform. I'll go back to database here and go back to the actual post itself. You can see here that we've got one called a photo URL. So I'm just going to reference these by name with inside this particular example. So let's now just choose that. Let's just say photo URL, and that should be good. If I just hit confirm there, that is great. Now we need to work on the actual title as well. That's just is simple. Let's just choose the actual text here. Let's go get post with parameters. Let's just move down here. We're going to say dollar. It's result again, and it's going to be of the post, and it's going to be the actual title. I'm just going to copy that so I don't need to type that again. So just hit the confirm, and then we're just going to do the actual content here. So we're just going to choose this one here, move over to the text, do the same thing again. Let's just paste that in here. I'm just going to double check Fastgen, but we called it content. That's fine. So just go back here and delete our title and just say content, just like that, and hit confirm. So we're good. So we're just going to do the date now. Now I've already got a custom function with inside this particular project that actually will take a string date that I've got. So with inside the Fastgen platform, we're going to get this date that's going to come out from the actual system field. If I just actually click on this option here and say show system columns, then you'll see here that in fact it doesn't happen. I need to kind of hide it and then bring it back in. I think that's a little quirk with inside Fastgen. It's not actually showing me. Let me just hook back out of here. Let me just go back into the actual post itself. Is this going to work for us? There we go. They're now filled. Little quirk, little glitch there with inside Fastgen. But you can see here, this is the date stamp that we've got here. Now we need to grab hold of that actual date stamp there as a string. And we're going to pass that into a custom function with inside Fastgen. With inside FlutterFlow, which is going to then convert that just to a standard format of date that's going to come out. So I'm just going to choose the text option here. I'm going to move down to custom functions, and I've got one here called format date and time. Just select that, and it expects me to pass in a string. So I'm just going to pass in the actual name of that string, just as we did previously. So I'm going to say get post with parameters here. I'm just going to move down here, and it's going to be the $.result.post. And if you remember back, it is called system underscore created at. So I'm just going to say system underscore created at. That's good. That's our actual string. So just hit confirm. That is good. Just hit confirm, and that should be good for us. Okay, so let's now work on the actual comments itself. So just on the left hand side here, you can see that I've got a widget here called a comments column, and within inside the comments column we have then a comments row, and that contains the profile image and just a text widget here that's just going to contain the actual content from the comments. So really simple stuff. So what we're going to do is we're now going to create some children on the comments column, and this will allow us to have a repeated list there of actual comments that come from the API response. So just with that one selected here, let's move over to the actual generate dynamic children option, and the variable name that we're just going to choose here is just going to be called comment here, but the value of course needs to come from the actual the post with comments response, okay, that we had earlier. So just choose that and move down to the actual custom here. Now if you remember that we are getting a result to come back, that's as you saw previously, so we're just going to say result, and then of course all of our comments were part of the actual result itself. So we know we had a list of comments like that. So that's all that we need to do. So we now know that we're going to get a series of children. If I just hit confirm there and hit confirm, you'll see now that we'll get a ghosted list now, which looks like it's a dynamic list that comes back, which is great. So it's representing it. It's just like it would be a list that we get coming back from our API. So now what we need to do, we now need to modify these particular widgets now to hook onto the actual fields within inside our database itself. So just let's work on the profile image first. Now if I go over to Fastgen here, let's go over to our database. Let's now have a look at the actual comments table, and we call this one user underscore profile underscore URL. So let's just go back here, go to the path. This time though, we're going to choose the comment item, the actual comment item itself. We're just going to select this and say JSON path, and we now need to give this a path to actually that particular photo URL. Now, of course, we don't need to put a result in here because what we've done is our children are being created actually at the comments level. So it's really, really straightforward. All we actually need to do is just type in the actual name of the field itself. And that is user underscore profile underscore URL. Just like that, simple as that. Just hit confirm, and we now need to also do the same as well for the content itself. So just choose that. Let's move up here. Let's move down to the actual comment item itself. Choose here, say JSON path, and we now just need to type this in itself. So it's just going to be, I think it was just comments. I think let's just go back to Fastgen here, and it's called comment. That's the actual database field. Perfect. So that is all that we need to do. Just hit confirm, and I think we are in a good position to test this out. So let's now quickly run this up in test mode, and let's hopefully we'll see the database of content come out from Fastgen. So here we go with test mode. Then let's give this a whirl, and excellent. There we go. We see a picture, we see all of our details, and we see our comments all in one here. Let's quickly go back to FlutterFlow here. Let's just quickly change the ID just to prove that this is all working. Let's just go back to the actual query. Let's go edit query. Let's change the ID. Let's change this to say 2. Let's go back to test mode. Let's hit the reload. And there you have it. We just got a new picture, and we've just got one comment come back. So things are looking really, really good. That's how simple it is to query into the API and then quickly build out the UI. I hope you just found this sample quite useful. It's really, of course, if you're a beginner to FlutterFlow, that's obviously going to be really good to kind of watch this kind of stuff. But of course, advanced users will probably be very familiar with this already. So there you go. Hope you enjoyed this little mini video here on using Fastgen and the APIs. Of course, I'll be covering so much more of Fastgen on my channel as the actual platform develops. Of course, is getting to quite a mature state. If you are interested, of course, please do look at my channel, because I've got a 2-part video there where we actually look at Fastgen authentication. So I've got a fantastic application which will work with the Fastgen platform that's going to allow you to actually sign yourself in. You obviously can create accounts as well, but you can sign in, and it will also maintain your session as well. So it uses kind of like quite an advanced concept of refresh tokens, but they're very, very key. It keeps your application nice and secure, and it'll give you a good foundation project where you can then start building using Fastgen as your back-end platform. But please do stick around on the channel. Please do like the video, and of course, please do subscribe to the channel as well, because I'll be covering so much more Fastgen as the platform develops. So until the next video, I'll see you soon.